Hello, folks, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Joe Love, here with your AEW Dynamite review for June 5th, 2024 edition of Dynamite, as we are on the route to Forbidden Door Part 3. And Dynamite last night garnered some interesting reviews. So, of course, I'll give my thoughts and my recap and stuff. What I will say, though, about Dynamite is we did have a good amount of good. The main event saw it between Swerve and Roddy. Although, how we got there was left to be desired. We got MJF. He returned. First part of the show. He returned. Came out to a good reception and cut a very good promo out in front of the Colorado faithful. And was interrupted by Roosh. And a brawl escalated out of it. So it seems like we got MJF's first feud garnering back for his return, so that's pretty unique. We did get a fun fatal 4-way to determine who will face Will Ospreay next week. We got another TNT Championship qualifier, which was a solid match between Ron Cage and Mark Briscoe. A good amount of good happened on last night's show. But, of course, gotta mention the cons of course, last night's show. So, one thing that's for certain. So, weeks ago, right before the NFL draft, the Elite and Tony Khan had the angle where he was dropped on his head with a Meltzer driver, or Tony Khan driver, what they call it now, and he was wearing that neck brace all throughout the draft. He donated to the Rich Eisen show now, but he wasn't out for a while. You'd expect for that kind of angle, a guy to be out for a while. And that plays into a part of the Young Bucks running things, because Tony Khan is the end all be all of overseeing things. And then last week, Christopher Daniels was announced to be the guy to call things for Tony Khan and the back if something's come up, to pretty much keep Tony off TV, so that's fine. Then, so Saturday, how we got to the main event. So Roddy had a match on Collision, and he came to the back and told Tony Khan, not the Bucks or Christopher Daniels, Tony Khan himself in the back, like, hey, I'm neck strong, you're neck strong, I was screwed on TNT or the international title at Double or Nothing. Give me a chance at the AEW World Championship, and then against Swerve, I'll win that, and then I'll beat Ospreay at Forbidden Door. So that was the nonchalant reason as to why we're getting the match last night. So, but then, last night we saw multiple authority figures. That's the case I'm making. Apologize for rambling, but that's the case I'm pretty much making, is multiple authority figures. And it can be messy because Tony Khan, again, expect to be out for a while, at least. But we saw him drive Darby Allin. We saw him on Collision that he's in the back, which in theory should override the Bucks' decisions, and the Bucks made a couple decisions last night, and at least Christopher Daniels was hired to make decisions on behalf of Tony Khan. Well, and then we see Tony Khan on Saturdays, and we saw Christopher Daniels last night. So it's pretty silly. But yeah, so that, and yeah. And I will say, we got 4, not 1, but 4 Learning Tree Chris Jericho segments on the show. Now, I'll be honest. Were they cheesy? Yes. Did they make me chuckle at how cheesy and ridiculous they kind of were? Yes. Were they needed? No. But in essence, I think we'd rather see these segments than Jericho wrestling. So, I mean, I guess it's a lesser of two evils in a way, but anyway, that was just, hilarious. I don't know what to say, but that was just, really 4 segments? But, So, anyways, guys, after that open and monologue out of the way, thank you all. And let's review Dynamite as a whole now, shall we? So, give my thoughts. So, MJF, I mentioned. He wasn't on last week's show after returning at Double or Nothing. But he was advertised, and he was the first thing. No opening pyro or anything. We just cut to MJF and his music. Now, a couple of differences. So, first, different color on the big screen in Titantron. So, we know MJF, we know him thoroughly because of his Burberry scarf. And, the colors and the pattern reigns on the big screen as Titantron. We didn't see that. It was more bluish. And we didn't see MJF come out in his scarf or suit. We see him came out in this badass jacket with his new t-shirt. which he plugged. So he plugged his new shirt. He plugged Forbidden Door, which will be in Long Island. So yeah, interesting schmuckness out of there. But so he talked about why, in case people were wondering why his eyes were a bit bloodshot. And he said, well, at the end of the day, they're in Colorado. So take it how you... take it what you will, but... So then... what was interesting is he ran down 3 guys in particular. So he talked about the Rainmaker, saying how at the end of the day he looks like he's not able to afford a gym membership. Talking about the guy who swerves around, calling himself a business mogul, but says at the end of the day, you're supposed to take business school, and that while he's probably in school, he probably skipped his public speaking course. And then he talked about a cuckless cuck in Will Ospreay, or he said bruv, talked about how he's the best in the world. But that's funny because he is the best in the world. And he said at the end of the day that Ospreay is not... he rattled off a number of names. He mentioned Chris Jericho, Cody Rhodes, Adam Cole, or Chris Jericho, Cody Rhodes, Adam Cole, Bryan Danielson, Kenny Omega, Hiroshi Tanahashi, a couple more, but in the end he said, but you know who managed to beat all of them? Him. So all of a sudden we hear Roosh's music hit. Well, and first thing, so MJF is a homegrown AEW talent. First and foremost. He is probably their best homegrown talent ever. And we know about this Team Elite versus the Elite versus Team AEW saga that's been going on. And I mentioned Okada. Now, it looks like it's going to be Roosh versus MJF at Forbidden Door. Because you're not going to have MJF off the Long Island card. So, first and foremost, okay there. Now, Kenny Omega and Okada tease having a match at All In at Wembley, but of course Kenny had surgery not too long ago, and again, we don't know when he's coming back. He said give him a few months and then they'll sell it, but we don't know. So that may be a match lined up, because Okada versus MJF, that would be a hell of a match for MJF too, because Tony Khan will likely want Will Ospreay, hence, being his home country, in the main event of All In. And if it's not against Ospreay, or excuse me, against MJF, who MJF mentioned, one of the guys, could rather be a match on the road. But nonetheless, it's interesting to think about match going forward. But they could easily do MJF and Okada, slide MJF into this Team AEW versus the Elite storyline, presumes, and you could definitely do that match. And then he mentioned Swerve as well. So, again, keeping the option open. They did have a segment last year. That was really their only tease. But that's, of course, a match they could go line up for in the future. Who knows? But, yeah. We'll see. So then we got Roosh then out there, and it's hard to say, but this might be the only time we've seen Roosh have a live microphone and being out there in front of the crowd. So this in a way was refreshing, and we know, look, Roosh is one of the best, but we don't see him a lot. He's had visa issues, he's had injuries, but nonetheless, a good first opponent for MJF to dot or get momentum against, certainly. So, Roosh talked about MJF getting this big celebration, but saying, where's his? Where's his moment? Because he's been here working while MJF has been on the sidelines, and basically called him, or said at the end, when you mess with the bull, you get the horns. So MJF said, I'm sorry, man, I can't remember or didn't get a word that you said. Asked the crowd if they got a word. Roosh said, I'm sorry, but I didn't get a word, so can you repeat that? And then when Roosh tried to talk in, MJF said, we don't give a shit. So there's that. So, and of course, there's history of last year when MJF alluded to that, I know who you are. Last year I paid you a lot of money to take out Bryan Danielson. So he talked about, things being different, how it's not being run by Tony Khan and instead being run by the Bucks. Which, after looking at last night, you're obviously confused. Anyway, so talked about wanting a spot and saying that, well, coming out in your suit, making your bank account a little dry, kind of like how all the women you slept with. And MJF also told at the end, well, you know what? And we're back. So, MJF told Rushin at the end, you want to know how that promo made me feel? So, let me tell you in the way you can understand. So, Then he said something, said a slur in Spanish, and in the end they bleeped it out. So I'm guessing it had to be, yeah, probably cuss him out in Spanish, if not said something about a family member. In any event, Roosh came down and they started brawling, fighting with one another, and then officials, Chris Daniels, and etc. came out to separate them. And yeah, good brawl and good segment to open the show. And yeah, looks like Forbidden Door probably first outcome pretty much for Maxwell Jacob Freeman and Roosh, which I'd be excited for, certainly. Roderick Strong. He had a little vignette. I have his World Top match. He was with the Kingdom. Talked about climbing mountains his whole life. And now he hopes to attain his goal of being world champion. So, it's funny. They reached to the top of the mountain. This is short. And Roddy yelled, "Swerve!" So, yeah. That was hilarious. And then he took off his glasses and he's like, "Guys, it's go time." So, yeah. Funny thing. Fatal 4-way to determine the number one contender or see who would get a shot at Will Ospreay for the international title next week. So, we got Kyle O'Reilly versus Orange Cassidy versus Ray Fenix versus Jay Lethal. Right off the bat, you can see out of the four names that I mentioned who is going to take the vote. And in the end, you kind of at first when I came to this match, because I checked on, came back. When I saw this match, I originally thought this was a TNT ladder match qualifier. Then I see, it's for the international title. So then I was definitely curious to see who would win. But then you're like, okay, out of the four, Lethal. You love Lethal, and it would be a good match with Ospreay, but you need someone out here to take the fall. So there's that. Kyle O'Reilly, he just had a match with Ospreay not too long ago. Orange Cassidy, he had too long of a reign, has already had enough time with the international title, so take that away. Plus, he just lost to Ospreay last week. And then you got Fenix. So, dude, tried some tribulations and figure out the method. Yeah, Fenix kind of made pretty much sense when he went over. But this is a solid match. To continue, the first part of the show was very fun. It was just certainly in the middle, it was suspect. So, but yeah, this is a fun match. So, Kyle went for a looked like it went for a suplex, and Orange tried to counter to a Slumdog Millionaire, but Kyle countered to a nasty looking armbar at first, in which Fenix hit a big splash on Kyle while he was holding the armbar. And then when Fenix was going for the pin, Lethal hit a top rope elbow to break up the cover. So, good little spot for separation. Orange then would hit a tornado DT in the middle of the ring. Kyle would follow up with some strikes in exchange with Orange Cassidy. Orange would then hit the Orange Punch, kind of taking out Kyle for the time being. Jay Lethal then was going after Fenix. He hit a dragon screw on Fenix, and then it looked like he was setting up Fenix, but then Jay Lethal hit the lethal injection on O'Reilly, which then took him out for the rest of the match. And then Lethal went for a figure four on Fenix, but Fenix countered to a roll-up pin, fluky win, 1, 2, 3, and Rey Fenix will get the nod and will get the opportunity to win back the international title against Ospreay next week. Now, we know Fenix is not going to win, but in hindsight, Ospreay, needs momentum going into Forbidden Door. Ospreay, we know, has been clamoring because there's rumors or speculation around Ricochet's contract situation, and Ospreay obviously wants Ricochet to leave WWE, come over so they can have another clinic of a match and wrestle again. I'm not sure how possible that is happening, but the way it seems, Ospreay is getting the next best thing in AEW. That's him versus Fenix next week. So, brace yourself, people. Brace yourselves. So, in the aftermatch, the only thing I hated was sometimes with AEW, they don't let the moment sink and it just cuts into kind of the next thing. So, Fenix won, he was at ringside. Orange Cassidy was up against the announce table. He was dejected and hurt. So, Trent Beretta, who joined the Don Callis family last week, he was out there with Callis. They're out there to target Orange Cassidy, but Orange Cassidy was ready, took a chain from Trent and Callis, and then Chris Statlander went in between. Now, it's funny because last week she interrupted Don Callis and Orange Cassidy's segment to accept being in the Don Callis family on behalf of her best friend, Trent Beretta. So she was trying to race in Orange, and then ultimately she decked Orange like we didn't see coming. And you could tell Orange was pissed. And Will Nightingale all of a sudden shows up because she wants revenge. And then so settling the scurries, and then settling the carries Stokely Hathaway on her back as they leave Scurry. This is some pairing, certainly. I don't know. We'll have to see more going forward. So we got the first of 4, like I said, 4 Learning Tree segments from Chris Jericho. So a black vehicle shows up, and I was thinking, I'm sure a lot of people are thinking the Elites were going to arrive out of this vehicle. But no, it's a Learning Tree. Jericho, Big Bill, and now Brian Keith. So Jericho, in a cheesy way, he's like, because some guy was driving this car and he's like, "Thanks, driver. Hey, by the way, as a owner of a valid driver's license for the last 30 years, it's important now to remember to stop at a stop sign every time, a full, complete stop. Remember that. Thanks, driver. Hey, bye, guys. Hi, guys. Thanks, guys." So he saw this cameraman named Larry. He called him Larry, Lonnie. Told him that he was shaking the camera, and he tried to show him how to do it. So he's filming Big Bill and Brian Keith. So Brian Keith just looks angry. But Big Bill's also happy. He's enjoying the day. He's saying, enjoys the little things in life. I mean, so then he told the cameraman, Jericho did, to follow them in the arena. So, yeah, that was the first one. Now I think we can all agree, hey, Big Bill should be looking like a badass, not like a odd positive giant. I think that's first and foremost. Brian Keith, this is not going to get me to care more about Brian Keith. I think, to be honest, although this cheesiness by Jericho probably cracked a number of people up. And not the best way, but yeah, it was silly and ridiculous. So Will Nightingale, backstage, she talked about her loss at Double or Nothing. She did give praise and congrats to Mercedes Moné, but knows that she had her beat for like an 8 count. But talked about down the line. Then she also mentioned about Chris Statlander and the happenings, saying she doesn't care about Stokely, but Chris, she's a person she would trust with her life, and the fact that she did that, was the wrong way, but now she knows, smiling and being positive, that's a stop, and You don't know what you've awoken. So, Orange Cassidy came into the frame, and he gave her a nonchalant, fist bump, and yeah, paying the favor to earlier. So, yeah. Christopher Daniels was out there, announced that there would be another qualifying match for the TNT Championship ladder match at Forbidden Door. Right here, right now in Colorado. So then we got Mark Briscoe next. The Ring of Honor World Champion versus Brian Cage. This was a solid match between two. I mean, in a way, this is a match you could see going on the way, but in essence of, well, Brian Cage, we don't really see winning that much. And then Mark Briscoe is the Ring of Honor World Champion. So, I think the tides are more for Mark Briscoe. But still the solid match, as we kind of figured. So, Briscoe had dived to the outside. He chucked a chair in the middle of the ring. And the referee took it away. The crowd did not seem amused. Briscoe basically called him dumb. So, Cage followed up with a little bit of miscommunication, and he attacked Briscoe on the outside, throwing him the barricade a few times. Followed it up with his big reel-in suplex from the apron to the ring, from the ropes. So that's always impressive by Cage. So then they had an exchange back in the ring. Mark hit some big forearms, followed with some redneck kung fu, then modified exploder for a near fall. Briscoe, this is kind of funny because referee took the first chair away, but I guess Mark kind of convinced him and kind of played along as to what he was using it for. So, set chair in the middle of the ring and hit a chair-assisted tope over top onto Cage, followed with a shotgun drop kick in the middle of the ring for a near fall. Cage followed up some offense, hit a backdrop into an exploder like faceplant press for a near fall. But in the end, Mark Briscoe would get the win. He had Death Valley Driver, followed a Froggy Bow. 1, 2, 3. Mark Briscoe advances to Forbidden Door. So Jack Perry was in the back. We saw him glancing in the middle of the match at a screen. And then he cut a promo after, to which Mark Briscoe stopped and looked at the big screen, because I imagine it was on the big screen. He watched Jack Perry's promo, talking about it doesn't matter, one way or another, he will be the TNT champion, and the universe has chosen him. It doesn't matter what Tony Khan, what they can do about it. So then, yeah, little things, but it was funny to see Mark Briscoe's reaction to Jack Perry's claims, and then walked back, saw the TNT title on the stand, and thought perhaps it'd be good for him to add some gold to his collection. I don't think that will happen, but we shall see. Samoa Joe and Hook. A segment, started off good with Samoa Joe and Hook, and then after. So, Renee Paquette was backstage wondering if this was kind of a new mentorship for Hook. So, then Tony Nese and Ariya Daivari came into the picture, I should say, and interrupted these two every time. So, I'm guessing Hook was eating a bag of Funyuns, and Nese was like, I can't believe you, man. I figure after all these years, you'd stop eating that crap and take it a little more serious. And Hook responded with, after all these years, you're still losing matches. So, bit of scuffle. Then, Ariya Daivari was like, what's wrong with you, Hook? Well, now you can't have your daddy saving you, so you got the world champion too? Former world champion too? So, Hook had to be out back, guys left. Joe said, well, killers, or I should say, guys like that don't come up to killers like us if they know they can get away with it. And judging by all this extra security, I'm sure that's what they were thinking. So he told Hook, we handled it on our time. So yeah, fist bumped. That was that. I mean, honestly, Samoa Joe had a rather short but so impactful world title run just recently. And last week, I promise. This week, we see Tony Nese and Ariya Daivari in the fold. So we go from Samoa Joe being world champion to mentoring Hook, being in segments with Tony Nese and Ariya Daivari. Correct? Love Tony Nese, but honestly, what has he done on TV much recently? Pretty much nothing. So it's like that, and it's like, it feels like they're in such a weird position with Hook. Because, again, he's still very young. I mean, depending on how many guys you're having in this TNT Championship ladder match, it'd be best for him to be in a qualifying match for said ladder match and go from there. But, yeah, I don't know. Or these two guys could certainly be in the Owen Hart tournament. Especially Joe. But we'll see. But, yeah, this segment did not look good for these guys. So we got the second of the 4 Learning Tree segments. So, so they were backstage and they ran into Matt Menard and Angelo Parker. former members of the Jericho Appreciation Society. Jericho said it's good to see two of his favorite branches, saying that now after their time together, their careers are bigger and better than ever. They mentioned how Daddy Magic, Matt Menard, has taken his job as lead commentator on Rampage. Which, by the way, Matt Menard is very good at commentating. Now, I'll be honest. It's a little odd that we haven't gotten any real tag team momentum out of Menard and Parker. But, yeah, nonetheless, good for Menard to have this commentating job. We'll see how it goes from in the ring going forward, but yeah, good for him. They mentioned to Parker, who's having a child with Ruby Soho, Jericho said congrats, but then as a father of three, he mentioned he has some advice. Make sure to give him a treat, an activity, time, and yourself. It's easy. Seriously, with the way Jericho is sounding in these, I mean, it's just... Ay. And make sure you enunciate. Or Jericho said to Menard in the commentary. And Bill was sounding it out. And then Menard said to Bill, why don't you shove it up your ass? And then Jericho was like, haha, good one. Same to Bill. So they walked off, and Brian Keith was like, make sure your kid better respects Chris Jericho. So yeah. The Acclaimed. Billy Gunn. So they're out there. This what I mean about the multiple authority figures. So we saw Chris Daniels, who's basically the supposed to be the acting voice of Tony Khan, or kind of the GM role, Sergen, in a way. So we saw Daniels twice earlier. And so now we have the Acclaimed, and then out there cutting a rap on the Young Bucks, and then the Young Bucks appear on the Titantron, and they mentioned how they had to cut their mics, and said, didn't you read the employee handbook? Said it's unhealthy and not good to disrespect your EVPs. So they decided to cut their segment altogether. So, and that was that. The Acclaimed tried to confront the Bucks later, but were met with security. I mean, we've seen it a few weeks. It seems like they're building towards a match between the Acclaimed and the Bucks, which sounds like a fun match. And the Acclaimed have lost some momentum really as of late. So, if they can get people to care about the Acclaimed again, fine. And match would be fun with the Bucks. So, yeah. Swerve Strickland. He was backstage. He talked about Max referencing him, MJF referencing him earlier, and mentioned how Max is a little bitch, saying, finally showed up to work, saying that you mentioned my name, you're going to deal with me, not in a way you're going to like. So, then he had the contract, so to speak, for him and Ospreay. Gave it to Prince Nana, said it's up to him to email it to the United Kingdom, lay it at the doorstep of Ospreay, so that way, and shipping's on him to make sure he gets the contract for the match at Forbidden Door, which, I mean, a relief he won the main event. Certainly a relief. But, and they talked about Anarchy in the Arena and Team AEW not having the world champ. So he suggested that next time they do a AEW for Team AEW for the Elite thing, they better have the AEW World Champion. And then whose house? Swerve's house. Mercedes Moné. So, Excalibur noted on commentary that her match with Stephanie Vaquer is official for Forbidden Door. Title versus title. They call. So, I believe it's going to be the TBS title first, the New Japan Strong Women's Championship, I believe, because she's also a champion in cmll, but I haven't seen the title, so I'm guessing that, yeah, just for those, which Mercedes was equipped to win last year, but she lost the will when she got hurt. So, yeah. But yeah, that's a good match. Line up for Forbidden Door. So, goes there. Blackpool Comic Club. All of them. Will Utah's back. As it's Jon Moxley, Bryan Danielson, Claudio Castagnoli, and the returning Will Utah versus 4 guys at cmll. Sorry, I didn't care. But good that Utah's back. So, he won with a modified Olympic Slam, followed a seatbelt finisher for the win. Now, good that Utah's back, because, you know, Bryan, this is last year as full-time. Moxley is the IWGP World Heavyweight Champion. So again, we don't know about his schedule. Claudio's been basically the only one who's been holding on the fort for the BCC as of recently. Kind of feels like, especially when Bryan's been injured of sorts. But good to see you back. I have to ask, why is he still a champion? Because you has been out for months with concussion issues, and he's apparently still a champion after so many weeks and instances where we vacated a title or have had an interim title. You is still a champion after being out for months. Yeah, but I get it, because Yuta wasn't present for the Arena Mexico match that the Blackpool Comic Club had in Mexico. So, and Matt Sydal participated in that match. So, this kind of redemption for Yuta, I guess, to be a part of this match. And then I guess they can move on, because Bryan Danielson made his intentions felt for later in the show about what his next move is, and it's great. Ready for another learning tree segment? Okay. This was probably the most hilarious one. It was the shortest. So, this time it was just Jericho. He went over to a guy that was at the buffet and said, "Hi, Branch. As a veteran of eating chicken and dumplings for 30 years, let me show you how to scoop it properly." So he's saying you have to dig down deep and rise and get from the top so it can goop well. So there you go. Thanks, guys. Jerk. Look again. These segments over the wrestling, good. It just sucks because Big Bill should be doing better things. And Brian Keith, so far what I've seen, this is not a good position for him. My stinking phone with bad calls. So, next up, we have a little vignette video of Daniel Garcia driving around, talking about his time when he was 19 and 20, showing up as a young wrestler, and talked about his car accident, which left him with 2 broken legs, which shaped up for Jericho to produce the GoFundMe, and thus the reason he was in the Jericho Appreciation Society. Daniel Garcia, so we know recently he talked about wanting to go for the international title in Will Ospreay. Yes, Will Ospreay is fighting Swerve for the world title at Forbidden Door, but we don't know who he may wrestle for the international title. So, we could see Ospreay versus Daniel Garcia in a nice match at Forbidden Door as well. So, we'll see. The Patriarchy. Christian Cage, Mother Wayne, Nick Wayne, and Killswitch backstage, and they met the Bucks, which, by the way, I heard Christian Cage's interview on Chris Van Fleet's thing. Amazing. Just great to hear from one of my favorites. Yeah, it's great to see. So, Christian talked about saying he got screwed over at Double or Nothing for the world title and says he wants another shot at the world championship. Says, well, and the Bucks said, well, if we had our way, we have a title for you, title for you, title for you. Funny, knowing that AEW has probably too many titles, according to people. Anywho, so Young Bucks said that they still have Stroke around and they'll see what they can do about it. And mention that for now, you scratch our backs, we'll scratch yours. So then they embraced, said some kind of words, and then Patriarchy left. They asked about shoe size for, kicks from the Young Bucks, and yeah, Matt asked for ball of water, and there was that. On to the next segment. Mariah versus Saraya. Again in this feud between Toni Storm, Mariah, and the Outcasts. So, I will say we haven't seen Saraya that too much anymore. She did look decent against Mariah, who's had some good momentum around her. But surprisingly, when it looks like they've been building up Mariah, Saraya got the win here. So she walked on her sharpshooter chicken wing combo submission hold, and Mariah verbally tapped out, and she got the win. A funny remark that Toni Storm did mention on commentary. She said AEW where the breast wrestle. And Taz was like, something like that, something fairly similar. Tony's hilarious. Tony is hilarious. Her and her gimmick, again, not much to say. Just hilarious. So afterwards, Saraya Harley Cameron got the beatdown on the two, and Mina Shirakawa, who's challenging Toni Storm at Forbidden Door for the AEW Women's World Championship, she was in for the save on Mariah and Toni Storm. And after, there was a bit of tug of war between Mina and Toni for Mariah, and really, the way it seems is Mariah is the favorite, seemingly, to win the Owen Hart Cup for the women, especially with the winner receiving a World Championship match at All In, and with, Mariah being friends with Mina, and, Mariah is the protege of Toni Storm. This match at Forbidden Door may provide the rocket fuel, certainly, to add for this eventual encounter. So, that I like. So we got to the final Learning Tree segment of the show. So we got the Learning Tree. They were backstage and they met Private Party. And Jericho was like, hey, parties are better when they are public or access to everyone. So said, why don't you call yourselves an public party? Got the punchline? So then, anyway, Jericho invited Private Party to be on their Learning Tree segment next week. Yep. Bryan Danielson. So I mentioned, and I wanted to mention this early, but nonetheless, it's a great thing. So with the Owen Hart Cup winner getting a World Championship match at Forbidden or All In, you gotta have big names. People that you could sway in to challenge for the world title at Wembley. Bryan Danielson falls under the category. And Bryan mentioned, how he did mention 8 months ago this would be his last year as a full-time wrestler. Did mention, all the bumps in the road, all the matches he lost, against Okada, against, Anarchy in the arena. He mentioned Christian Cage losing TNT Championship, etc. But the big matches, he loses, and he loses. It's funny because, if Tony Khan wanted to, he'd make Bryan a big-time champion in AEW. But we know first and foremost, Bryan said he wanted to wrestle. That's all he wanted to do. So, Bryan said that once he saw Yuta come back and fight like hell, he realized that his year ain't over yet. So then, saying that now, with Tony Khan mentioning that the winner of the Owen Hart tournament gets a World Championship match at All In, that energized him, that fueled him up, and that gives him a reason to fight for. So, he said that, this may be my last shot, but he's going to go out on top. Kind of pulling the heartstrings a little bit. Because it's tough. Bryan Danielson, Christian Cage. If it was up to me, those two would be in the main event right now for the Owen Hart Cup. Ospreay. Yeah, it's difficult because you don't know what they're going to do with Ospreay after Forbidden Door. But the crowning achievement should be All In. So, does he lose at Forbidden Door then win the tournament? It's certainly out there. But I don't know. But nonetheless, great first participant. And we'll see what comes next out of it. Main event time. Roderick Strong versus Swerve Strickland for the AEW World Championship. Solid match as you expect out of these two. The way we got here, again, not a great reason, but we got here. And albeit I was kind of wondering if we'd get MJF or some involvement of the Kingdom or Will Ospreay. We didn't get any, really. So, but very solid match between the two. So, and this is what I like about Swerve's arsenal. He finds ways to hit the Swerve Stomp more often. So, Roddy went for a gutbuster, but was countered to a Swerve Stomp by Swerve. And then Swerve got this rhythm of offense. He had diving elbow to the back of the head. And then they were exchanging off the ropes. Flatliner, and then a suplex by Swerve for a near fall. Then went for his powerbomb into a power slam. Offense for a 2. Ryu would get the upper hand. Back at it. So they were on the outside. Roddy hit a end of heartache basically to Swerve on the apron as he flipped him up like an end of heartache, but instead he flipped him onto the ring apron. So brutal way for Swerve to land. So there you go. So then back in the ring, Roddy hit an Olympic slam followed a Tiger driver for a near fall. Then a sick kick for a near fall. Roddy then was tied up in the ropes, but was hanging over the apron. So Swerve followed a swerve stomp, sending Roddy to the outside. Then followed up back in the ring. Roddy tried to hit a big knee on the Swerve, but Swerve fended off. And then Swerve followed up with a house call. Kick to the side head. 1, 2, 3. Swerve gets the victory and retains the AEW World Championship in a solid way to end the show. Afterwards, him and Prince Nana celebrated. And they noticed a elderly woman in the crowd. She was dancing to the vibe of the Swerve dance, or the Prince Nana dance. So that was hilarious. And a heartfelt moment a bit to end the show. But yeah, guys. So that was Dynamite. So again, a number of good things and a number of bad number of left to be desired things on the show. So was alright. We'll see, but it's great that MJF is back. Feeling with Roosh. Great that Bryan is going for an Owen Hart Cup. It's a good sign for going forward of the tournament. Hopefully the rest of the field follows suit. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. Again, on the route to Forbidden Door and the Owen Hart Cup tournament. Mark Briscoe add to the TNT title ladder match. And we'll get Fenix versus Will Ospreay next week. So again, hold your horses, people. We'll see. But for now, guys, thank you all for joining me. If you did, leave us or hit the subscription in the corner if you haven't already. Leave a like, leave a thumbs up. Thank you guys all, and see you guys next time on the podcast. But see you guys all. Take care and peace.